we went to, a couple of us kids went to a summer camp up in Antioch related to a church that we attended. And now, 40 years later, I related to a gentleman I was selling some product to that I had gone there. And he said, "Oh, you mean the one for underprivileged kids?" And it stopped me dead in my tracks. And I said, "I'm not an underprivileged kid." But then I thought back and said, yeah, we had nothing to eat. We were starving. We lost 40 pounds in a matter of a month. We ate nothing but Carnation instant milk, and we had a case of Baby Ruth candy bars. I suppose I was underprivileged and undernourished, certainly, but I've never considered myself that. Just like the family doesn't consider themselves to be refugees.
Right.
Because that's behind us, and what I have now is because that is what I've become. Mm-hmm. So there's a point in all of our lives where we become adults, and that point is when we stop blaming our current existence for what was foisted upon us as children that was out of our control. And when that epiphany hits you going, wait a minute, I can't say that I am who I am because of what somebody else did to me any longer. I am now an adult, and I'm now responsible for making a new chapter. I think that's what they did, but they did it at a so much younger age because they had to. There was no other option. And I'm sure living in a farmhouse or whatever, laundry or whatever it was, have you heard the story about the ocean liner trip where they stopped the ocean liner mid-sea?
No.
Okay, so this is my mother's story. You got a bunch of teenagers and kids on a ship, pretty much unsupervised. So according to my mother, one night they threw a duffel bag overboard, yes, and yelled, "Man overboard." And so they stopped the ocean liner and fished it out with these long poles only to find it full of clothes. But my mother's family had the power to stop an ocean liner mid-sea just for fun. So they had to be a little bit on the, if you will say, the naughty side.
Well, your mother said to me the other day that she didn't tell me that the ocean liner stopped, but I believe you. But she said that they learned that when they got to New York, they were going to have to pay a tariff for any clothing that they were bringing other than what was on their backs.
Okay.
So they got nervous, and that they were going to have to, they didn't have any money, that they were going to have to pay for all these clothes that the Jewish Children's Bureau or whomever had given them in Bremerhaven when they left. So they figured, let's get rid of the clothes.
Maybe that's why.
And they got a sailor to give them a duffel, and they stuffed it with the clothes. And that's the story she told me the other day.
I see. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, the missing piece of the puzzle for me is how, and I've always been told they were smuggled by the GIs and got on the first ship. How did they leave the farm and end up on the refugee ship, if you will call it that,
yes,
to America?
Yes.
That is the whole piece that I have not really ever been satisfied with a story with.
My understanding is that when the Russians invaded Germany, they were coming toward Vorin, the town, and they were told to get out. So Schmidt got them out of there and brought them back to Berlin. They survived in Berlin until Germany was liberated, and it was your mother who took my mother with her, and she got in big trouble from Papa for doing that. But it was your mother who went to, I wish I could remember the name of the bureau, and she's the one who figured out how to get how to get asylum somewhere else. You know, at that time, people were leaving Germany in droves. They were going to Ireland. They were going to Palestine. They were going to America. They were going anywhere but Germany and Poland and Russia. And they chose Chicago. For whatever reason, Papa said Chicago. You're going to Chicago. So that's when he had to abdicate any rights to his children so that they could deem themselves as orphans to come over to America. And I think Alphonse does write about it in one of his booklets. Do you have copies of his writings? Oh, I'll get you all the copies. I'll send you all the copies. And have you been on my mom's blog?
You're on the email chain where she was sending out my vacation and
yes, but I haven't taken the time to read the blog.
Okay, so in those links is a blog that my brother wrote for my mother. And tons of these writings and things are in that blog. So you can find all of Alphonse's papers and things like that. And I think at this point we have almost all of the documents that that they've submitted to Yad Vashem are on the blog as well. Yeah.
Well, that's something that I'd like to
Sure.
get a hold of. I mean, I did watch Alphonse's funeral service.
So I've never seen that.
It was online. I think I still have the link on my phone.
I haven't.
It was his rabbi,
Right.
just talking about him.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't.
There was no.
They don't
Was it
do
at the service or was it at, there was a
Memorial
gala,
service.
there was a gala that is when his rabbi announced that there was going to be an Alphonse Weber scholarship fund.
right?
No, this was in a synagogue, I believe.
Oh, well, that's what the gala was.
Yeah.
also.
Oh, okay.
So maybe it was the same thing.
So anyway, that's when I found out more about him because, believe me, I did not have any connection with him. I just thought him to be the smartest man in the world, and I don't relate to that guy very well. We weren't on the same level. So, I remember the last time that I saw him at your mom's house, he put on a funny hat and it was kind of goofing around, and everybody commented on this because he was finally relaxing and he was becoming more of a human being than a mind machine. And it was a good time, but there was just never any connection on my end. I don't know about you.
Yeah,
You guys wrote to each other.
You did.
You wrote to each other, Alphonse.
Well, that was about, religion and kind of some of the same questions you had, and not really wondering which path to go on, but just I threw out some writings and what have you. But it was at the end, and so, never really continued. No, this is truly good stuff because it's a whole different perspective.
Right.
And it was whispered to me that one time years ago that my mother had a play in getting them out of Germany. But what would be really interesting to see that path that they had to take,
Right.
Where they put on a truck under a pack of potatoes, where they, put on a train. How did they end up at the port to come over here, and what that
they
must
first
like?
were in it's what they call DP camps.
Is that when they were in the DP camp?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Several of them actually.
Right.
Okay.
I
Right.
think
All right.
3 or 4 different DP camps.
Right.
What about the accounting story that you always told me about your grandfather did accounting for the Germans and pretended to be...
No.
Was that him?
No, that was a story that
Okay.
disconnected. No.
All right.
No. I know Sherwin did books at night in
No,
the basement
I
of
know.
his house,
The
but
grandfather.
no.
Now,
He
do
was
you have
he was an electrician, and he wound motors is all I knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any different stories from what I've said? You must.
You must. You must.
Probably. I just can't, pull them up right now.
Okay.
Probably turd on something. But.
What's interesting is you went through a period where you went to Seder's and, you were engulfing yourself in Judaism and you thought you might go down that path. I've had that same yearning. But for me, anti-Semitism has not gone away, right? And people will say snippy comments out of nowhere toward Jews. And I'm not the bravest man in the world, but when I hear these, I stop them and go, excuse me, I'm a Jew. You might not think that with my last name or with whatever, but I take offense at that, and it's not right. Why would you say that? And they look at me like, oh, I don't know where it goes, but I will not stand for it if I hear it. Just like I was in and I'm not saying this to be self-serving. I was in a Home Depot a couple of years ago, and some man was berating a woman who was from another country just for being here. Much like what we're seeing in the news today, where immigrants are coming across the border and they're being castigated just for being who they are. And so I said, excuse me, sir. You're not original to this country any more than she is, so you have no right to say this. Well, those little moments don't happen often enough. Okay, there was an incident where a policeman just last week did not stand up for a woman who was Puerto Rican who was being abused by some guy just because he was saying she wasn't American. Well, she responded by saying, "You don't know what you're talking about. I am an